Welcome to the Mets Pod, presented by Tri-State Cadillac. On today's show, it's our trade deadline preview. We break down the rumors and trade targets for the Mets. So subscribe to the Mets Pod at Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can watch every episode on SMY's YouTube channel or wherever you get your shows. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Mets Pod, presented by Tri-State Cadillac. Taking a Cadillac is more than just taking a drive. Discover which Cadillac is right for you and elevate every journey. Visit your Tri-State Cadillac dealer. I'm your host, Connor Rogers, joined as always by my co-host, Joe DeMayo. And until the opener against the Padres, Joe, the Mets were scorching hot going into trade deadline week. If David Stearns needed any more reason to improve this team, the roster has absolutely given him those reasons. How are you, Joe?
I'm doing great. I've even been able to stay up for games because I'm off during the day now, so I'm up late. I appreciate the ones that were on Twitter when I posted about Ronnie Mauricio's home run in the ninth inning, and they're like, Joe, you're up? You're awake?
That was everybody's reaction. I texted you in the morning. It's the first game in a while. I tapped out. I had to be up early for return back to NBC, and I was like, you know what? 7-game winning streak. I don't want to ever call a game house money. And when I woke up to the text from you about Ronnie's home run, I was like, Joe, what were you doing? Like, what's going on?
I was laying in bed. I was on the verge, but I toughed it out, made it through. And as soon as the game ended, I thought to myself, well, this is why I go to sleep when they have West Coast games, because it seems like they rarely work out. But all in all, so far, still a couple games left to go here with San Diego. The West Coast trip has been kind to the Mets. And, the San Fran series, a nice sweep. The bullpen, which the Mets added a guy that we'll talk about here in a minute,
Sure.
But no runs allowed in the whole weekend series against San Francisco. So it makes me, it excites me to the fact that I think there's more to come in the next 48-ish hours before the deadline to the bullpen, where I think the bullpen might be able to become the strength of the team that we thought it could be coming into the season.
Probably felt like a look in the mirror for the Mets when San Francisco didn't have a hit with runners in scoring position just forever, and even worse than what the Mets have done in those scenarios. 5-1 since our last podcast for the Mets. They've played really well, and it's funny, Joe. Even with all these wins, they haven't played up to what we're used to them. We were kind of discussing this as July has been quietly one of the worst months of Pete Alonso's career. He's just hit a really, really rough slump. His OPS is below 600. And, Lindor was going through it for a while and has kind of snapped out of it here. Soto has been a little bit more up and down after his June, where he was arguably the best player in all of baseball. But the positive of that during all these wins is that you kind of hinted at it. The bullpen is rounded back into form and gets the addition of Gregory Soto, another lefty in this bullpen, the return of Brooks Raley. But the bottom of the lineup, the youngsters, the return of Francisco Alvarez, a little bit of a breakout here from Ronnie Mauricio, which that power is just incredible to watch when he connects with one. Brett Beatty playing a little bit more consistent, both offensively and defensively. And dare I say it, Joe, Mark Vientos, we've been waiting for you all year, and it looks like the confidence is starting to climb back in for Mark Vientos right now. So the kids are all right over here. And what this does to the Mets offense, Joe, because they are doing all of this right now while really the big boppers at the top are not doing much of anything. It just makes you wonder if you ever get a mix of both going. It doesn't have to be everybody, but you maybe get Soto and Lindor going while Mauricio and Alvarez are hitting. Some kind of combination from top to bottom. This lineup could be really, really dangerous. And we're going to get into a potential addition to this lineup in just a bit. But as it stands right now, Joe, it's been nice to see a little balance or a little bit of help from the bottom of the order.
A lot better, because a month ago we were doing this show and just, this lineup is 4 deep. Maybe it's 5 deep, and then it's a black hole beyond. Now the young players, which we have to be cognizant of the fact they are young players that are having conveniently, I think, hot stretches on top of each other, which there is another cold stretch probably to come for each and every one of the young players that are on this roster. But seeing what Ronnie Mauricio is capable of, I mean, this is why I think the Mets are not really interested in moving Mauricio here at the deadline. I think
untouchable to me, Joe. I have no interest in discussing Ronnie Mauricio. I think he can play an infield spot for this team for a very long time with power.
No question. And he has, like, if we could just tighten up that strike zone plate
Sure.
discipline a little bit, it's really a potential star. And I love, 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 love what Francisco Alvarez has done in just a few games back, but he's back. The offensive approach looks better. He's taking the ball the other way with authority. And in the game against San Diego on Monday, that they lost, it is what it is. But you saw the Alvarez confidence in the dugout when Frankie Montas had the 1-2-3 fourth inning and he's talking him to the dugout. Like, that's the commanding presence that Alvarez was his rookie year that made Max Scherzer want to throw to him and Justin Verlander want to throw to him, and the young and veteran pitchers wanted to throw to him. Now it seems like he's got all that confidence just wrapped back into him.
It really does. And it's that kind of sport where when you're a young hitter and you are playing every day, or if you're not playing every day, Mark Vientos has spoke up about this. Confidence is just such a powerful thing. And you're kind of seeing just the body language and the approach of all of these guys drastically change at the plate. I think all four of them look very, very different. Alvarez with the patience. Mauricio, just the radius he has, it feels like he can cover. He has swing and miss. We know that. But he also has the ability to cover a lot of the play and hit for power. And then you look at Beatty, it just feels like we're finally seeing a little more consistency in his at-bats. And Vientos, while the at-bats have looked better, it hasn't always led to results. Now we're starting to see some power. I mean, Monday night, he should have had 2 home runs. That's an incredible catch by Fernando Tatis. You just got to tip your cap sometimes. Yeah. Shout out to Fernando Tatis and the umpire behind the plate, who were really the MVPs of that game. It's we don't even have to go there because it's not a game to me where I look at it and go, the Mets lost because of the ump. I just think it makes a mockery of the sport when you have those kind of performances from an umpire and it really turns into their own kind of show. But you just see now the conversation is, Joe, do the Mets dare, and we can kind of mesh this with the trade deadline, dip into that pool of players to improve the team elsewhere? And I think this is a really tough equation for David Stearns, and we'll get to the addition specifically of Gregory Soto in just a second and the rumors out there. But while talking about, notably, Alvarez isn't in this conversation because he's the Mets catcher of the now and the future. But this logjam of infielders right now with Beatty, Mauricio, Vientos, and Luis Angel Acuna is in this. It's going to be really interesting, Joe, where Stearns is willing to dip into to be careful with his prospect pool, but also not sell too early on one of those 4. And then you look down the road a year or 2 from now and go, God, I wish we were still cost efficient at that spot. And I don't know if he's going to do it, but the Mets have to improve this team. And sometimes you have to take risk. And all 4 of those guys right now, really besides Acuna, who doesn't play much, are giving him every reason to think twice about maybe moving one of them. And we talked about, we don't think Mauricio is going anywhere, nor should he. I think even trading Beatty would be a little bit of a surprise. But there's been a lot of Vientos noise out there. And it's funny that he hit a grand slam on the night where the noise was loud during the day.
We will get into specifically in the scoreboard segment about Vientos, but talking in general just about the infield logjam, it has to get cleared up at some point. Does it have to get cleared up in the next 48 hours? Not necessarily, because you have guys with minor league options, so you could make the roster work this year, but this is going to be the really tricky thing for Stearns to navigate, whether that's now or this winter, because the value of young players spikes and goes into a valley just really quickly based on sometimes small sample of performance. And the last thing you want to do is hang on to all of them and then be left with nothing when whatever amount of them don't work out. So it's very important for David Stearns and this Mets front office to be able to identify, of the young infielders specifically, which one can we part with? Is that Vientos? Is that Beatty? You and I would agree. I don't think Mauricio's in play. Acuna, maybe he's someone that can get more playing time somewhere else rather than what he would get here with the Mets. And that could make sense from a change of scenery type of standpoint. But the next 48 hours will be very interesting. I would keep a really close eye on these infielders because I think there is a real possibility that one of them is not a Met when we do a post deadline Mets pod or whenever next time we're on this, it's possible. And these guys are not a Met. But David Stearns is going to have to be very strategic in how he manages it.
Well, let me ask you this, Joe, because I think the way you have a handle on the farm system makes you the perfect person for this question. When you look at the idea of potentially trading Luis Angel Acuna for even a rental, but to upgrade an area of the team that is a weakness right now, say center field, say pitching, whatever it may be, right? And those are the two obvious ones. Is the supply in the farm system, and I'm talking about Jet Williams, does it make that one a little bit easier to digest, knowing that when you project him out, Jet Williams, with his speed and versatility, projects as a better version of Luis Angel Acuna. And maybe Luis Angel Acuna does develop into an everyday player down the road, whether that's here or somewhere else. But what we've seen, the Mets are telling you right now, they view him as speed and defense off the bench as a replacement, where Jet is supposed to eventually give you speed and defense and more, expected to be an everyday player. Does that one make it where people in the moment would be like, wow, they really traded Acuna already? But for you projecting out the farm system, does that one make it a little easier to digest? Where you look at Vientos, say what you want about what he can't do in the field, he has power. And we know the premium placed on power all the time. Mauricio is the same thing, and a little bit of a different conversation right now. But do you know where I'm going here?
Yeah, for sure. And I think there is some logic there. You don't really want to bank on a
It's
prospect
dangerous.
becoming anything or becoming whatever they're going to, whether they are going to be a starter or an everyday player. So you don't want to bank on it. But at the same time, you definitely look through your organization and say, do we have a version of this that maybe is not impacting us for the rest of this season, but sometime next season, I imagine Jet Williams is going to be knocking on the door of the big leagues. And at that point, yeah, I think he's a better version of Luis Angel Acuna. At the Double-A level, Acuna hit when he was with Texas in a very hitter-friendly league, but he never hit the way Jet Williams hits. And he's maybe a slightly better athlete, but I do agree with you, Connor, and I do think you're on to something, that having the presence of someone like Jet could maybe ease the blow a little bit of losing someone like Acuna, and you could always fill the kind of backup infield type of job with some veteran on a 1-year deal until Jet would be ready sometime next year.
If you want your update on Jet Williams' season at Double-A Binghamton, 86 games, he's hitting 288. He's getting on base almost 40% of the time. His OPS is just below 900. So Jet Williams is kind of outgrowing Binghamton right now. And, we're going to see him in Syracuse before you know it. All right, Joe, let's get into the acquisition of Gregory Soto, because this is the trade that has actually come down the pipeline. We've got to see him pitch twice already. This is a reliever that when you look at the Mets' needs, specifically another lefty who is, I know we're in the era where it's weird to call a guy a specialist because of the 3-batter rule, but it still does matter a lot. Gregory Soto, I mean, lefties can't touch him this year, Joe. 523 OPS against them. They're hitting 131 against them. He has struggled against righties. The OPS 730. It's not a ton of power against him, but hitting 284, getting on base because the walks he gives up over 37% of the time. But this is somebody with excellent stuff, Joe, that can really help you get through a jam when you have a tough lefty up at the plate.
I think Gregory Soto was exactly what the Mets needed for this bullpen, and they need more. So there is more reinforcements that they need, but they needed a second lefty. They had visions of AJ Minter and Brooks Raley being their lefty combination in the second half. And obviously Minter's out for the year, as is Danny Young. But when you have someone like Brooks Raley, who's your sweeper, 90-mile-an-hour sinker, kind of pitchability lefty, you want your other one to be a different profile. And looking across the landscape, I think the reason the Mets got out in front of this is I don't think there's going to be someone else like Gregory Soto that's going to be available at this deadline. Seems like the stack of available relievers are almost all right-handed. So if you want that second lefty with power stuff, the Mets maybe had to trade someone that they weren't ecstatic to give away. I think it was a long and arduous negotiation. I believe David Stearns said they were talking for 2 weeks before they finally figured out a deal to bring Soto to the Mets. But I think he's precisely what the Mets need. Power stuff. It's a fastball /sinker that'll get into the upper 90s, wipeout slider. As you mentioned, lefties can't really touch him. He doesn't really have that third pitch, so I think that's why righties will have a little more success, because slider, you're either kind of burying it at their feet or it's going kind of into the barrel of their bat. So it's a little difficult for him. But as far as just adding to the bullpen and filling a need, Gregory Soto, I think, was exactly what the Mets needed.
Yeah, so the Mets making a early trade deadline move, acquiring Soto. We've got to see him twice. First appearance, lights out. Second appearance, like you said, he almost kind of cleaned up his own mess a little bit in a game that got away from the Mets. All right, let's go down on the farm here. You have a mailbag edition down on the farm. We're going to continue more trade deadline talk during the scoreboard and talk about some of the rumors going on in there. And of course, we have a lot of the rumors mixed into the mailbag as well. So the trade deadline theme is not going anywhere throughout this entire episode, but we do want to hit down on the farm. And thank you to Michael Brooks NYC on YouTube for the question. Hey guys, we need a podcast dedicated to the most exciting team in baseball, the Binghamton Rumble Ponies. They're a show. As much as I love watching the Ponies as currently constructed, I don't understand why some of these guys, namely Jonah Tong, Jet Williams, and Ryan Clifford, are still there. Are promotions to Syracuse forthcoming? And a shout out to Kevin Parada for taking a big leap forward this year. A lot to unpack here, Joe.
Yeah.
I kind of want to start with what Michael finished with, because we have not discussed this yet. Kevin Parada has had a really slow start. It was kind of, you're looking at the situation, you're going, man, is it just not going to ever work for Kevin Parada? And it feels like over the last 30 plus days, something has clicked for Kevin Parada. But man, no joke, this team is really, really loaded, where you kind of look at it and go, dang, Syracuse might be really, really good next year when they get all the Rumble Ponies.
We don't talk about Kevin Parada because obviously the success hasn't come. But as you mentioned, over the last month, the power is not really there, the home run power specifically. But he's hitting 313, 352 on base, and an 873 OPS over the last 28 days. So basically over the last month, Kevin Parada is taking a lot more professional at bats. The strikeout rate is down a little bit. So he's starting to, it seems like he's figuring things out. And I think we often forget, and this is not like, Kevin Parada is about to break out again and be the first round pick that the Mets took at 10 overall. But I think it's a guy that was going from looking like a complete bust to maybe regaining some semblance of prospect capital and value, however you want to look at it. But looking across the Rumble Ponies, you want to talk about the top guys. I posted this on Twitter a day ago during the minor league off day on Monday. In the month of July, Carson Bench is hitting 375 with an OPS of 1.123 with 5 home runs, 14 RBIs, and a 10-10 walk to strikeouts, the same amount of walks as strikeouts. Ryan Clifford is hitting 260, 400 on base, 8 home runs, and 25 RBIs this month. And Jet Williams, he's doing okay, I guess. 282, 874 OPS with 8 doubles and 3 home runs. But the Rumble Ponies team is so fun to watch. It is on one of my screens every single night. And as you said, I think the Syracuse Mets are going to be fun next year when a lot of these guys are there. I would keep an eye on the next week and a half. Once we get past the trade deadline and we see what the Mets actually move, that'll dictate some movement up and down throughout the minor leagues. And, a guy like Jonah Tong, I hate to say, to me, he's just wasting his time in Double-A. I don't think he needs to be there anymore. Yeah, he's not just bored. Like, sometimes guys are bored and then they struggle because they're kind of like playing around. Jonah's just dominating every single time.
He outgrew the league.
Yeah. It is his turn to be at AAA, and I'm hopeful that happens shortly after the trade deadline.
It is nice to have these conversations about a team in the Mets system, that they are just so loaded. And you look at it, when these guys make the jump to Syracuse, there's a world, Joe, where say half of them keep it up in next year, and then you get to see them in the major leagues next year. One injury away from a call-up. It doesn't mean that Jonah Tong's going to be lights out in AAA, or Clifford, Jet, and Benj are just going to tear it up. But if 2 of the 4 have success next year in their first full year in Syracuse, they're going to get the call eventually and be a big part of this team in the future. And they're not far away at all. Speaking of which, things are also going well for the boys in Brooklyn this season. Passing along some notes from our friends at the Cyclones. This Friday night is Irish night with post-game fireworks. Get a ticket with 2 drinks for $25. Saturday is world-famous Seinfeld night. Every fan in attendance gets the Kramer bobblehead. Sunday is Moana night with the Hawaiian bucket cap giveaway for the first 1,000 fans. Plus, enjoy a pregame catch on the field. Kids run the bases. Free ice cream for the first 500 kids. Also, just announced a Pablo Sanchez bobblehead giveaway on August 29th. For tickets and details, visit brooklyncyclones.com/tickets. All right, time for the scoreboard. And there's been a lot of jokes about me. Jokes about me being a seller at the deadline because of my spiral here. I'm glad everybody's getting their laughs off. I still have some time to make up some ground. Over-under push was at 1 for Francisco Alvarez home runs. Joe, you pushed. I pushed. We were right. And Alvarez hit that home run early, and then he didn't hit one again. So we both land a point. Over-under push was at 1 for Mark Vientos home runs. Nice job getting this one at the deadline, Joe. You pushed. I went under. Vientos hit a home run. Another point to Joe. Although, to be fair, he really should have had 2 in one
You should
game.
have had 2, so yeah.
So I can't complain too much.
Should have been a 0.
Over under 5.5, Francisco Lindor hits. Of course, you could thank us for getting Lindor out of his slump because we both went under. Lindor went over. He had 8 hits. Lindor is back. Over under 2.5 for Brooks Raley appearances. We both went under. I remember specifically we both said 2 when we did the math. And Brooks Raley had 2 appearances. We both get a point. The Mets need to be a little careful, not have Brooks Raley pitch over 50% of the games here. Over under 4.5 for Juan Soto walks. Joe, you went over. I went under. And this is just how it goes for Joe this time of year. Juan Soto walks 5 times. He walks. Now, I guess
it's free money that you refuse to take. I don't know what to tell you.
I guess the problem is I once again can't complain too much because some of the egregious calls against Juan Soto in terms of the strike zone feel personal right now. Feel personal.
Yeah.
So yeah. I'm not going to complain too much about that one. Over under push was at 2 for starters going at least 6 innings. Joe, you were semi-confident. You went with the push. I went under. I had no confidence in this happening, and it didn't. I get the point. They had one guy go 6 innings, and his name is David Peterson because it's always David
Frankie
Peterson.
Montas went 5 2/3, and I texted
That's the story of the year.
That pissed me off.
It happened to Clay Holmes for 2 months. Now it's the Frankie Montas. Unfortunately for Senga, this is a guy you want built back up for 6 innings, and he hasn't been able to do it. Manaea is going to get there, but yeah, so it's been a real problem for the Mets. Over under push was at 4 for Mets wins. Joe, you pushed. I went under. The Mets went over. The Mets win 5 of 6 games on our scoreboard here, and Joe, you win the week 4-3, which is just I'll take a 3-point week, but man, at the rate you're going right now, you've really turned this thing around. I just got to tip my cap. You were at a snail's pace in the beginning of the year, but now you lead 49-44.
Team, Connor.
It certainly looks like it. Let's see if you can keep it up. Part 1 is going to be all trade deadline. Part 2, we'll get into the actual games as we always do. So we got a pretty big scoreboard here. Yes or no, will Mark Vientos be a Met post-trade deadline? Joe, you won the week. You get to kick us off.
So we talked earlier about the logjam of infielders and does something have to give, and saw a bunch of quotes from Mark Vientos. Shout out to Anthony DeComo, who had a bunch of those in an article for MLB.com. I'm going to say Mark Vientos is the infielder that the Mets trade at the deadline. So I will say Mark Vientos will not be a Met after the trade deadline.
All right, I'm going to go, yes, he will be a Met. I think the Mets trade Luis Angel Acuna at this. Now, maybe they pivot and go prospects. It's weird, and I feel like I've really kind of flipped on this because it looked like for a while Vientos just didn't have a home here anymore after such a great season and great playoffs last year. But he's turned the corner in a week, and you need to be careful buying into small sample sizes. But if his confidence is back and the power he has, if they include Vientos in a return for a starting pitcher, that makes so much sense to me.
Yeah.
But this is going to bring me to the next one where I don't think he should be the return. Yes or no, will Luis Robert be a Met post-trade deadline? And I say yes, Joe. I think this is the center fielder they want. I know it's the center fielder you want. Obviously, Cedric Mullins' name is being thrown out there as well. But I think Vientos will be a Met, and I think Luis Robert Jr. will be a Met after the trade deadline.
I'm going to join you here. I think Luis Robert will end up with the Mets. And This is a tough one, right? Because the Padres or the Phillies or some other team could come in and offer more than the Mets, and that's that. So you're being very specific about this player ending up a Met. But the Mets have to do something in center field, and Robert just fits like a glove with exactly what they need, what David Stearns looks for. He is speed, he is defense, so that checks that box. The Mets haven't hit lefties. Luis Robert crushes lefties. So to me, it's the perfect fit, and it's just a matter of finding a deal that makes sense with Chicago. But I will join you and say, yes, we will see Luis Robert in a Mets uniform.
I think the combo around Luis Robert has kind of turned the wrong way, where the combo, as it was 2 years ago, was, well, he has star potential and he's had big moments, and you can't be a star for you. That to me is not the conversation if the Mets acquire him. It's not, is he going to be a star here? The conversation is he an upgrade at center field that fits? And you just laid out the exact reasons why, Joe. Number one, a 996 OPS against lefties. 996.
Yeah. And considering he's hitting like barely above the Mendoza line in total, so like you wouldn't even think to look into the splits because his baseline numbers are so drastically low.
He's borderline offensively unplayable against right-handed pitching. That's the problem right now for him, but he's almost a 300 hitter that gets on base 42% of the time against lefties. He steals a ton of bases. He plays a really, really good center field. The conversation for the Mets, if they go after Luis Robert, is not for him to be a star. It's for him to be an upgrade at center field that will help them also against lefties. And I think that's why, David Stearns is all over this one. We'll see if they get it done. Yes or no? Will the Mets trade for a starting pitcher before the trade deadline? Joe, I think this is the hardest one.
Yeah, this is very hard. I'm going to say no, that they will not. But I have been adamant on this show that I think they should. And it doesn't necessarily have to be somebody that would start game 1, 2, or 3. Right. So David Stearns said that, and that's his opinion. I respectfully disagree with him, because if you are going to be in the NLCS, which is the objective of this team, or the World Series, you're going to need more than 3 starters. So who is starting a game 4 for you right now? Frankie Montas with Clay Holmes piggybacking? Are you happy with that? And if the answer is probably no. So can you get a better version of Frankie Montas at the deadline? That would be what I would be trying to get. And of course, if I could pull in a Sandy Alcantara or a Dylan Cease or one of the potential frontline starters, I'm open to doing that as well. But I think the Mets should be more into starting pitching than maybe it sounds like they are. So I will say no, they won't. But Joe's opinion is they should.
And because of Joe's opinion, I'm going to say yes. I understand when people listen to Stearns talk, and I do think we don't do this too much. We do it with certain things, but in general, the coverage of Stearns is he's a small market thinking guy, and he's never going to number one, he's been here for a year. We don't know how David Stearns is going to treat the trade deadline. What I do know is right now, the American League stinks. Okay. It's not good. So whoever makes the World Series from that side, the Mets got a good shot against. It's just really dang hard to get there. But the Dodgers haven't been a juggernaut this year. They've been good, but they haven't been unstoppable. You don't look at the Dodgers and go, how would anyone ever beat them? The NL is very competitive. The Phillies roster is getting older, and I would imagine in this next 48 hours, they are going to be ultra aggressive to really not only try to win the division this year, but to not disappoint in the playoffs. The Brewers and the Cubs have been playing really, really good. We know when things are right how good the Padres can be. The National League's competitive. But if you're the Mets, you're sitting there and going, I have Juan Soto in his prime. I have Francisco Lindor and Pete Alonso in their prime, who are quietly getting older. And I'm not saying the Mets, I don't believe the Mets are a window team anymore. They have an owner that invests. They have a very smart president of baseball operations. It's why they build and try to retain a farm system. But this is a really good time to try to win a World Series this year. And if you asked me this a week ago, I'd say absolutely not. Today, I think the Mets get a little aggressive and get a starting pitcher at this deadline, Joe, for all the reasons you laid out.
Yeah, it makes all the sense in the world. And, maybe
the supply is not good, though. There's not a lot of supply.
It's not an exciting supply. And maybe I am buying a little too much into the words that David Stern said, and he is 1,000 times smarter than me, so he's using maybe words to his advantage.
I'll
I
say
think now,
50 times
Connor,
smarter, not 1,000.
50? Okay. Well,
Yeah.
very nice of you. Very nice of you. But what I will say here is David Stern's will, whether that is now or soon, he's going to have to prove to people in a way that he is not just that small market guy. You want the small market aspect of improving on the fringes of the roster because that's really how you win in baseball. But he's also got to be able to, have the cojones to step up when it's time to go for a World Series and make a move that may not be popular, may be aggressive. Like in New York, you do have to take those chances from time to time.
Our final trade deadline category before we get to the slate ahead on the schedule. Yes or no, will any prospects in Joe's current top 10 be traded away? So this is tricky. And I said I think Vientos is going to be here. So I'm going to say yes. I don't think it's going to be Jonah Tong, Carson Bench, Jet Williams, Nolan McLean, Brandon Sproat. But on the back end of your top 10, Joe, I wouldn't be shocked if one guy is. Where's Drew Gilbert for you in your latest one?
I think he was 10.
So I thought he was
exactly 10. Yeah, so I think he's 10.
That level of player going in a deal wouldn't shock me. What do you think of this one?
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me either. I think I will say yes as well. I think it'll be someone on the back end. I'm with you. Like Jonah Tong's not going anywhere. Nolan McLean's not going anywhere. Jet Williams, Carson Bench. Maybe I would say Brandon Sproat is like the high end of what could go, but I don't feel particularly confident that the Mets are looking to move him. And if you're trying to get impact, like even if you're not trading for Griffin Jacks or Joan Duran or one of these controllable relievers, a guy like Ryan Helsley with the Cardinals, obviously good closer and would come here and be the setup man for the Mets. That's still going to run you probably a top 10-ish prospect. You're not getting him for nothing. So I will say yes, that they will lose a prospect that I like. I won't predict which one, but someone I think at the back end has a chance to go.
All right, and on to part two. The Mets got 6 games for our schedule this week. 2 against the Padres, or 2 more against the Padres. 3 against the Giants again that get to come to Citi Field this time. And 1 against the Guardians. Speaking of the Giants coming to Citi Field, Joe, are you surprised how few baseballs have been hit into McCovey Cove? Did you hear that number?
Yeah, nothing, because it's not far. You have to hit it high, but it's not that far.
I guess the official tally, it has to actually splash, like direct. It cannot bounce in.
Yeah. Oh, it can't hit like that walkway. That's like
I
beyond.
don't think those count. I think it has to direct, like full Ronnie Mauricio splash.
Right, that was a splash. Yeah.
So
I was definitely surprised because Barry Bonds felt like he hit like a million of them himself.
I thought he had 80 on his own.
Yeah, and everybody else plays there every day that they have a home game, home and away. And it's, again, I guess there's some probably breeze coming off the water that knocks it down just enough, but it's not that far. I think Mauricio's home run that went in the water was like 390 something feet. Like it's not like you have to hit it 450 to get it there.
You nailed it though. You have to cut through the wind. That's the problem. And Mauricio hits some of the most high velocity scorchers you'll ever see in a Mets uniform. So that's how he was able to do that. All right, you kick us off with the first one. Over under 1.5 Pete Alonso home runs. I said this earlier in the show quietly because the Mets have been winning, which is good. And I think Pete's going to snap out of this at the right time. This is one of the worst months I can remember in Pete Alonso's career. He has been well below a 600 OPS. So this is a pretty big number for the next 6 games. But as we know, Joe, like when Pete snaps out of these, he can go nuclear at times.
He's been ice cold. July has not been the right month for him, but July is just about to end in the middle of this week in the scoreboard. So I will go over and say Pete Alonso will hit 2 home runs. Maybe he sneaks one here in the next couple days, and then the calendar flips to August. He gets another, and we're off and running.
Yeah, and just to actually give you the exact numbers, I mean, Pete had a monster June. He had a 920 OPS. He had his typical 7 home runs. He batted almost 300. In July, he's batting 152. He's getting on base only 25% of the time. OPS is 579. So, and that's kind of been Pete's season. April, March, OPS over 1100. May, OPS below 700. June, OPS over 900. July OPS below 600. He's just been an every other month guy.
Yeah.
It's so, but his highs have been, he's been one of the best bats in baseball during his highs. These are so hard to predict because he can hit 2 home runs in a game as good as anyone else. I'm going to go under here because he's really deep in it right now. And we might have a couple more days of this funk for Pete. Over under 5.5 for Juan Soto walks. So the number went up a little bit here, Joe. I'm going to double down, and maybe that's foolish. I'm going to go under the 5.5 in this. And I know you're just going to keep riding the wave of the over.
I am going to keep riding the train. That's been working. The 5.5 did give me some pause and make me think about going under because I believe the last couple times he got exactly 5. I know obviously last week he did, but I'm going to ride it and say over. Juan Soto is a walk machine, and I will just trust that he will draw walks. So six walks in 6 games, that seems pretty easy.
Yeah, it just depends who's behind the plate and if they have working eyeballs. Over under push is at 4 for Mets wins. Joe, you get to kick this one off as the Mets have been playing some really good baseball lately.
Feels like a push to me. I think I think 4-2, just continue playing good baseball like the Mets are and have been now for the last week and a half. Don't think 5-1 I think is lofty, and 6-0 I would sign up for that, obviously. But 4-2 seems like the right number to me.
Yeah, I'm with you. I agree with you on this one. I'm going to go with the push here. The Mets, they always play well at home, so you factor in that. And maybe get a little juice from a couple trade deadline acquisitions. Don't forget that kind of energy that can bring into, I've heard guys talk about this a lot in interviews. When reinforcements walk into a clubhouse or a locker room in any sport, you look at it and go, okay, the organization believes that we have what it takes to go all the way. And that kind of gets everybody fired up a little bit. So maybe a little bit of an adrenaline week for the Mets, and they can win 4 of 6 of these. And that's where we're both leaning. You're listening to the Mets Pod presented by Tri-State Cadillac. Subscribe to the Mets Pod at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SMY's YouTube channel, or wherever you get your podcasts. Let's get into the mailbag, Joe. This one from Oliver LFGM. Thank you for the 5-star review. Choice A, keep our young guys, Acuna, Mauricio, Vientos, Beatty, and bring up Sproat and or McLean. Or choice B, trade one or more of them for a playoff dependable pitcher and a center fielder. Well, I think number one, nothing the Mets have done so far, and maybe this changes, points that they're going to go with choice A. They just haven't been interested in Sproat or Nolan McLean, having a leaning on them in a big spot this year, and that can change, of course. If I have to choose, I'm still going to go with choice B, Joe. I would love to get a player. Now, I'm not trading Mauricio. I've said that a million times, right, but I would love to get a dependable pitcher. That's going to cost a lot, and a center fielder. And if, I have to move Luis Angel Acuna and some prospects, and maybe even talk about, I said Vientos for a starting pitcher is where I'm willing to go. Yep. Then so be it. I want the Mets to go not all in. I think that's a stupid phrase. All in to me is we traded Jet Williams and Jonah Tong for the top rental pitcher or Eugenio Suarez. Like I'm never a believer in that. But or didn't work. We have one in our recent.
Armstrong
I didn't want to do it.
But,
yeah. So I've learned the hard way about that. But I think you could balance this one. I go choice B.
Yeah, I lean choice B as well. I think trading from, especially because it said one or more, so I could just trade one of them, and I will trade one of the glut logjam infielders, whether that is Acuna or Vientos. Those would be the two that I would be targeting as well. But choice A, just to give it a little bit of credence, having a lot of depth is not a bad thing. You can make these guys work because, as we said, young players are going to go through cold stretches. So if Ronnie Mauricio hits another cold stretch, he finds his way on the bench for a little bit, or Brett Beatty finds a cold stretch, finds his way on the bench, and that could open up more playing time for Vientos or Acuna. So you can make it work. It's a difficult puzzle to put together, but you can. And then you talk about those young pitchers, even though the Mets haven't shown interest, maybe that is some juice to the rotation. Instead of trading for Merrill Kelly or someone like that, like a mid-ish rotation guy, are you more interested in giving a shot to one of the young pitchers that are pitching well at the AAA level and bring juice in that way. So I see the side of choice A, but I will lean choice B because I think it's a more logical way.
Without a doubt. All right, the next one from Joseph Lopicolo, Jolo94 on Twitter. Why is umpiring, specifically on Soto at-bats, so bad? So honestly, Joe, I've actually seen this one go both ways. There's been times I've noticed this year where umps have so much respect for Soto that they have called balls for him on pitches that have dabbled around corners where I'm like, it really could have been a strike, but I think they have that much respect for Soto. The problem is the calls against him are so egregious, like the Monday Night Padres game, where it's not even close. And Todd Zeal did a great job of this on the broadcast. Umps miss pitches. They had a year's worth of missed pitches on Monday night, but that's a different conversation. Umps miss pitches. It's going to go for you and against you throughout the baseball season. As I've grown older, I've tried to become a little bit more rational digesting that. The problem is that where I get very angry or at least annoyed is it's not about you. And that ump almost was challenging Soto. And I mean, and great job by Carlos Mendoza and the entire Mets organization on the field for making sure Soto didn't get ejected. But the problem I have with this is, because I went back and looked, he did this about a year ago to Lane Thomas. Lane Thomas didn't even say a word to him. And when Lane Thomas turned around at a bad call, he just threw Lane Thomas out of the game. So this umpire specifically has a very short fuse. And I think a qualification of the job is you need to be somewhat level-headed, because this is an emotional sport and an emotional job, and you can't take everything so personal. And the second Soto strikeout was an abomination because it was personal and had nothing to do with the game. And it's an embarrassment for baseball. And I think that's why we look at it and say, God, it feels like the umpiring towards Soto is so bad because the lows feel so much lower. But I don't think it's just about him. I just think that was a time where it came off very personal, and that's embarrassing.
Maybe a couple umpires are just mad that Juan Soto knows the strike zone better than they do. Maybe that's just it. But last night, Monday night, was a disaster. And what really got me mad, like Todd said, they're going to miss calls. Some are going to be for you. Some are going to be against you. That be the way the cookie crumbles. Umpiring is not easy with what these pitchers are doing now. But look, this is your job. And it was egregious, some of the missed calls. And when you said challenging Juan Soto, that pitch was at his neck. He called it strike three.
He had to look up at it.
And as soon as he punched him out, he stared directly
That's the problem.
At Soto. Yeah. So he definitely was upset about whatever Juan Soto said that almost got him ejected. And shout out to Antoine Richardson and Mike Sarbaugh and Pete Alonso. Yeah, just grabbing him and saying, get in there, get out of here. We can't lose you for the game. And Carlos Mendoza doing the right thing at the exact right moment to throw himself on the sword. And that's the way to do it. But the umpiring in Monday night's game was an absolute disaster behind home plate. And I totally, like, as you said, it seemed personal towards Juan Soto specifically, that maybe Juan said something that made that umpire upset, because not only did he call a horrible pitch a strike, he stared him down like, yeah, that was the call. What are you going to do about it? Essentially.
Then you're not qualified to be an umpire in Major League Baseball.
There should be, I want to say the word maturity test, but that's maybe not the right one, but something along those lines where these guys need to not only be qualified to be calling balls and strikes and out and safe and everything that an umpire needs to do, but as you said, I think they need to be able to realize if you miss calls, you're going to get some stuff from players and coaches and stuff, and your immediate reaction can't be rip your mask off and start screaming back or eject like at the first moment of someone disagreeing with you. You have to have some level-headedness to it.
Yeah, you can't escalate a situation, because that's just going to make it makes everybody look that much worse. And I don't know why the sport and the leaders of the sport would want that. And there's no accountability in this sport for umpires. And that's what everybody's frustrated with. I didn't see anybody logging on today, or we didn't open our podcast saying the Mets lost against the Padres, because that's not the conversation. It's not the reason they lost. It's that we're all watching a product, investing a lot of time, on this product that we love, the game we love. And moments like that are kind of just a slap in the face, not only to the players, but to everybody sitting in the stands and everybody watching it night in and night out. The next question is from Joe at Joe's Burners. Hopefully this isn't from you, Joe. How confident are you with the state of our starters? Are you comfortable enough to go to the playoffs with what we have? So that's really the right way to frame it. It's not about, just getting through the season, which does matter, but it's how do you line up in the postseason? Because we look at the Mets as a playoff team and a team that we want to go far. Obviously on this podcast, we're big fans of David Peterson, always have been, Sean Manaea, and hopefully Kodai Senga can get back to being what we know Kodai Senga could be. That's what you feel good lining up with. Joe, you framed this really well before. How do you feel with Frankie Montas and maybe Clay Holmes piggybacking him in a game 4? I don't think there's anyone in the world that looks at you in the straight face and goes, I feel pretty good about that against some of the best lineups in baseball. So the honest answer for me is that's a huge problem for me. But I have enough awareness to know the lack of supply in the starting pitching market does not mean it's easy to go get an improvement, unfortunately.
Right. Just because Zach Gallen's having a down year doesn't mean you get him for your 18th ranked prospect. Like, they're still going to expect something good for him. So as far as comfort with the rotation, I'm comfortable in a wild card series. If the Mets happen to be playing in a 3-game wild card series, I feel good with Senga, Manaea, and Peterson. You could probably skate through an NLDS with starting someone else one game and then you're okay. But it's just a matter of this team has the expectations to be NLCS, World Series. When you're getting to those 7-game series, that's where you need the depth of starters. You need someone you can rely on beyond those top 3. Because look, Kodai Senga is not pitching on short rest. I mean, that's just not going to happen. Sean Manaea, can he pitch on short rest? Theoretically, but now he's got the loose bodies in his elbow.
It's a lot to ask.
Makes sense. So it's a lot to ask. So the more that we talk about it and talk out loud and think about it, the Mets should be adding somebody to this rotation in the next 48 hours, unless they have a supreme amount of confidence in Nolan McLean or Brandon Sproat to come up at some point in the second half and be that guy. I think it would be in the Mets' best interest to bring somebody in over the next couple of days.
All right, the final question, and this is a fun one from St. Lucie, Mr. Met. That's Rob AC516 on Twitter. Besides Cespedes, what was your favorite deadline move in the past decade?
It's tough because I'm trying to think of buying, and the Mets had so few buying years because they're just not good most of the time. So I'm trying to think of, like, what was my favorite? I mean, a deadline move could be a sell, like the Justin Verlander trade, I think, was fantastic and has a chance to have a big impact on the Mets going forward with guys like Drew Gilbert or Ryan Clifford potentially making an impact. But as far as buying, I'm going to let you take it first, Connor.
I have a sneaky one.
Yeah, let's hear it.
It didn't pay off at the end, but he was so vital to the run they went on, parallel to Cespedes, and obviously different caliber, but you never hear him talked about. It's never mentioned. Tyler Clippard was an awesome acquisition in 2015 for the Mets. That team kind of was, they were very flat for a while, and they got going, and then they got Cespedes, which was the biggest jolt of lightning ever. But we kind of forget getting Clippard to be Familia's setup man allowed them to finish games in that run. They would take leads because of Cespedes and what the offense became in the starting pitching, but they did have a problem bridging the gap between that great rotation to Familia, who was awesome, and Clippard. They didn't really give up much to get him from the A's. Casey Meisner was who they gave up. And
I remember Casey Meisner, high school, big hard thrower, and just never was able to put it together. And that's the deal with these prospects. And it's my game. It's what I love. It's what I cover and have covered for a long time. But a lot of them are going to become Casey Meisners. It's just a matter of making sure when you trade, you're not trading the Pete Crow Armstrongs and you're trading the Casey Meisners.
Right. And for, like, to put it in perspective, imagine the Mets right now, Joe, gave up a Casey Meisner level prospect, and someone told you they're going to get a setup man in return that's going to pitch almost 33 innings for you the rest of the year to a 3 ERA. You'd be like, amazing. That's exactly what I want right now. Yeah. Once again, Clippard had some rough moments in that postseason, but He was a huge reason they were able to finish games and get there. And that's exactly what the Mets are looking for right now.
I've figured it out, and I think I'm going to go Jesse Winker. I know it's very recent, but we talked about it last year. He brought that edge that I think this team really needed. Yep. And he was obviously big in the postseason, and he loved to break helmets, and everything was fun and awesome about Jesse Winker. So I think I'll go him because he added a dynamic to this team, and it wasn't Cespedes, and it maybe wasn't the biggest impact that you ever would get from a statistical standpoint. But I think Jesse Winker was a key figure in making the 2024 Mets what they ultimately became, which was a team that took the Dodgers to 6 games in the NLCS and was probably one of the more fun seasons of our life as a fan.
I would love to see Winker make it back in time and get hot right for, the end of the year into the playoffs.
Come back September 1st, Jesse. No rush. We'll take you back when you're ready, but it would
that might be part of that could be, part of the plan for the Mets. We're going to see. It would be after what's probably felt like such a lost season for Jesse. It would be pretty awesome for him to have a couple more of those moments with the team, because he is, once again, one of those Thunderbolt kind of acquisitions. All right, so I feel like we kind of layered our final predictions into the show, Joe. We both think Luis Robert will be a Met. We're split on if Vientos still will be. We're split on if they get a starting pitcher. And I think we're both pretty confident they're going to get a reliever that can be a fringe setup man for you. It's weird because in today's game, it's not as rigid as okay, you pitch the 8th inning and then you hand the ball to the closer. Things are a little bit more strategic than that. But I think this is going to be a pretty active trade deadline for the Mets. I think our next podcast we'll be talking about at least 2, possibly 3 new faces on this team.
Yeah, I think multiple moves are coming. The word I would use is a high leverage reliever. I think that's the best way to frame it. So that's a guy you throw in the 8th inning in an ideal day, fantastic, but just a high leverage guy. I would say most likely be right-handed, probably not left-handed. I think the Mets got probably the best left-handed reliever that will get dealt at this deadline, if I had to guess, in Gregory Soto. I think a center fielder, Luis Robert, is the one. That was partial hope on my end, that I just really want to see Luis Robert as a Met, but I'm going to continue to ride that. I think it'll happen. Center field makes too much sense. I mean, if there's any evidence that the Mets need the center fielder, it was a small thing and it had no impact on the game on Monday night. The first batter hit a pop-up and Brett Beatty went to medium depth center field to go get it, and McNeil just stood there and watched him get it. McNeil, I appreciate him being out there doing the best he can.
It's a team first move,
Yeah, 100%. But he's not a center fielder, and the Mets need to bring one in. And we'll keep an eye on the starting pitching market, because as much as I said no, I don't think they'll get one, I just basically talked myself into them getting one throughout this entire podcast.
You really have.
I do think there's more moves to come, and maybe one, hopefully not everything on deadline day. Let's spread it out a little bit. Let's do one Tuesday night or Wednesday, and then do some on Thursday. But I expect an active next couple of days for the Mets and Major League Baseball. The trade deadline's always fun to follow.
This is the Mets Pod presented by Tri-State Cadillac. Taking a Cadillac is more than just taking a drive. Discover which Cadillac is right for you and elevate every journey. Visit your Tri-State Cadillac dealer. Remember to subscribe to the show at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a review with a question, and we'll look for it for a future mailbag. And, of course, you can watch the show on SNY's YouTube channel. Become a subscriber over there as well, especially with potential trade deadline coverage. If you're a subscriber, you will never miss a show. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.